is in the hellfire. Contemplate on this ayat. Contemplate on the Quran. Contemplate on your life. Reflect on what I'm about to read right now. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم القارعة ما القارعة وما أدراك ما القارعة القارعة. What is that? The striking hour. This is the resurrection. This is the Yawm al-Qiyamah. It's named Al-Qari'ah because it sounds, it strikes. It's a striking sound that hurts the ears. Al-Qari'ah is one of the descriptions of Yawm al-Qiyamah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He chooses to describe the last day with some of its sifat, with some of its descriptions, such as Yawm al-Qiyamah, the day when all of us will stand, such as Yawm al-Akhir, the last and final day, such as Yawm al-Hashr, the day when all of mankind will be resurrected. Allah mentions that day, its descriptions to show the seriousness of it. These names must encourage us to prepare for it. No one will be safe. No one will be safe from the fear except the one who comes with good deeds, and the believer will not be frightened. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He said in the Quran, لا يحزنهم الفزع الأكبر وتتلقاهم الملائكة هذا يومكم الذي كنتم توعدون. He said the supreme horror, the supreme terror will not grieve them. لا يحزنهم الفزع. Their horror, that terrifying event on that day will not scare them. And the angels will welcome them, saying, this is the day which you were promised. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, after mentioning Al-Qari'ah, He asked, Ma Al-Qari'ah? Ma Al-Qari'ah? What is it? What is the striking hour? وَمَا أَدَرَاكَ مَا الْقَارِعَةِ? And what's going to make you understand what the striking hour is? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is reiterating the seriousness of that day, which no one truly knows the severity of it but Him. This address is to all of mankind. This question is to wake us up in the sleeping, in the slumber, in our negligence, in our heedlessness. He said, وَمَا أَدَرَاكَ مَا الْقَارِعَةِ? What's going to make you understand what is Al-Qari'ah? So Allah is sending this as a reminder. It should help us. It should help us wake up and face the reality that none of us is going to escape. After Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions Al-Qari'ah 3 times, He begins to give this description. He said, يَوْمَ يَكُونُ النَّاسُ كَالْفَرَاشِ الْمَبَثُوثِ وَتَكُونُ الْجِبَالُ كَالْعِهْنِ الْمَنْفُوشِ. He said, it is a day where mankind will be like moths scattered about. This is the day in which people will be gathered all together. Black, white, Arab, Asian, everyone from the time of Adam until the end of the world will be resurrected. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He said that they will be like scattered moths. And in another verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He gives a more illicit detail. He said, خُشَاعٌ أَبْصَارَهُمْ يَخْرَجُونَ مِنَ الْأَجْدَاثِ كَأَنَّهُمْ جَرَادٌ مُنْتَشِرٌ. He said they will come forth with humbled eyes from their graves as if they were locusts spread about. Think about the locusts when they fly throughout the earth in front of people scattered out. How does that scene look? When you see the locusts, 1,000,000 locusts, spread it out, scattered out. This is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has described how we're going to come out of our graves and be resurrected in front of Him on that day. This is how people are going to come out of their graves in fear and in terror, seeing things that they haven't seen before, an imaginal thing in our minds totally unimaginable right now in our minds on some of the scenes we're going to see on that day in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When the hell will be brought, when the Jannah will be brought, when the Malaika will be seen, when the prophets will be available. That day is a day that all of us must prepare for. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He said, and the mountains will be like carded wool. Think about the largest mountain right now, Mount Everest. The largest mountain will become like wool. Standing firm, this mountain is right now, high in this dunya. But on that day, it's going to be like carded wool. How many of you have seen Mount Uhud? That mountain as well. You know how wool is, especially when it's warm. Allah has explained what the Al-Qari'ah is and how people are going to be on that day. Following this, Allah talks about the placement of the scales to weigh our deeds. The scales is going to weigh our deeds. This is the day of fairness. This is the day of justice. Each and every servant will have his deeds weighed on the scales, and nothing will be displaced. Any small deed that you do, it's not going to be forgotten on that day. Any small evil that you do, you're going to see it on that day against you. Nothing that you have done in this life is going to be neglected. You're going to be given your book of deeds, and it's going to be placed on the scale, regardless of its size. Big, small, large, everything. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He informs us how to be saved on that day by saying, فَأَمَّا مَنْ ثَقُلَتْ مَوَازِينُهُ. As for one whose balance of good deeds will be heavy, meaning whose ever good deeds outweighs his bad deeds, how is his life going to be? He said, فَهُوَ فِي عِيشَةٍ رَاضِيَةٍ. Then he is going to be having a pleasant life. He's going to have a pleasant life of happiness. This happiness is Jannah, my brothers and sisters. This happiness is Jannatul Firdaus. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for Jannatul Firdaus al-A'la. Jannah where you see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's face. Jannah where there's no pain. Jannah where there's no suffering. Jannah with the Malaika. Everything that you could imagine. And then some will be there in Jannah. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for Jannah. No one on that day. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he advised us. He said, no one on that day will be safe. Everyone will be worried, nafsi, nafsi, nafsi. You're going to be worried about yourself, your book of deeds when it's given to you, even your wife, even your children, the most beloved people to you. If you were to ask them for one deed, if you're one deed short entering into Jannah, no one is going to give it to you. Everyone is going to abandon you, who you loved and was close with in this life. They're going to turn their backs on you and be worried about themselves. Are we getting prepared for that? The people who slandered people, the people who oppressed people, they're going to be trying to apologize on that day when they see that their deeds that they did in this life is recorded against them. Are you prepared, my brothers and sisters? Are we prepared? Am I prepared? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He said about those people on Al-Qari'ah, He said, وَأَمَّا مَنْ خَفَّتْ مَوَازِينَ. As for those whose balance of good deeds will be light, as for those whose bad deeds outweigh their good deeds, what is his condition? Allah said, فَأُمُّهُ هَاوِيَةٌ. فَأُمُّهُ هَاوِيَةٌ. He will have his home in Hawiyah, a pit of hell, Jahannam. This is the residence, my brothers and sisters. This is the domain. This is the residence for the sinners, for the wicked people, for those who oppressed others in this life, those who took other people's rights, those who violated other people, who thought they were getting away with it. They have to face the music on Yawm al-Qiyamah. They have to face their reality. Each and every one of us. We've wronged somebody. We have to go back and apologize to them now. All the people who we oppressed, all the people who we've slandered, apologize to them now. Because when you get your book, Ibadullah, when you get your book, Anatullah, when you get your book, Slaves of Allah, that's it. Everything has been recorded. Everything has been recorded. Allah said, فَأُمُّهُ هَاوِيَةٌ, a pit in hell. This in this verse As the scholars of Tafsir said, it refers to the man and the woman being tossed and thrown into hell head first. Head first. Being thrown into Jahannam. Head first. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He asks you. He asks us. He places a question. وَمَا أَدَرَاكَ مَا هِيَ. And what will make you know what it is? What is Hawiyah? And then He closes off, He said, Narun Hamiyah. He said that it is a blazing fire. The Most High mentioned a blazing fire. And all fire in this life is hot and blazing. All the fire in this life is hot and blazing. However, the fire in the next life is nowhere as hot as the fire in this life. And ask yourself right now, how many of you can withstand the fire in this life, in the dunya? Light a match and put your hand over the fire. You can't keep your hand above that fire 30 seconds. 30 seconds. If I was to light a match right now in my hand and tell you, Abdullah, put your hand over this fire for $1 million, for 30 seconds you wouldn't be able to do it without feeling excruciating pain, without feeling torment. How do you think about a place where everything is burning? The trees are burning in Jahannam. The ground beneath you is burning. The ceiling above you is burning. Are you able to withstand that? Think about it. This surah, my brothers and sisters, it proves that there is resurrection, that there is qiyamah. This surah, it teaches us that there is a scale, a mizan, that's going to weigh our deeds. And it shows us that people will be of two parties on that day. فَرِيقٌ فِي الْجَنَّةِ وَفَرِيقٌ فِي النَّارِ. Which fariq do you want to be from? Which team are you preparing for? Which team are you preparing for in that life? And which one do you want to be for? أقول قولي هذا أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على الخير النبي المرسلين محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. The next chapter connected with Al-Qari'ah is the chapter Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He said, Al-Haakumut Takaathur, Hatta zurtumul maqabir. Hatta zurtumul maqabir. Think about that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He said, the mutual rivalry for piling up of worldly things diverts you, competing for wealth, competing for power, competing for that promotion, competing for children, competing for that house, competing for that nice vacation. Everything that you hope for in this dunya, competing and striving for, it has diverted you from the reality. Until when? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He said, Hatta zurtumul maqabir, until you visit the grave. My brothers and sisters, you should know that this dunya, everything in this dunya is a diversion. It looks real, it smells real, it seems real, but it's only just an illusion. The reality begins hatta zurtumul maqabir. When you visit your grave, then you're going to see the true reality. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He warns us in Surah Al-Hadid. He said, "I'lamu annama al-hayat ad-dunya la'bun wa lahbun wa zinatun." وزينة وتفاخر بينكم وتكاثر في الأموال والأولاد. He said, know that the life of this world, لعب, is play. ولهو, idle talk. وزينة, beauty, pomp, opulence. وتفاخر, and boasting between yourselves. I have this, I have that. Oh, I'm getting this next month. I'm traveling to Paris. I'm building my house. You're competing and boasting about the things that you have. وَتَكَاثُرٌ فِي الْأَمْوَالِ, the money that you've saved in the bank. وَالْأَوْلَادِ, and the children that you have. These things that divert you from the hereafter until you visit the grave, until death comes to you. And death, my brothers and sisters, there's no warning. Our death, all of our deaths, mine, yours, our children's, it is already recorded with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's no warning. You're going to die in the year 2020. There's no warning. It can happen at any minute, and it will happen at any second. How is it going to be when death comes to you all of a sudden and you're buried? How's that you didn't finish building your house? You were planning trips. You had intentions to do so many things. But death came to you, took your soul. You're dead. You're going to your grave. You're going to your grave. Allah used the word visit. He said, حَتَّى زُرْتُمُ الْمَقَابِرِ. He used the word visit because the grave, for each and every one of us, is a temporary place. And it's a place that all of us have to visit. All of us must visit the grave. But it's temporary. Some of us are going to be in there longer than others. Some of our people, of course, who have preceded us, have been there 900 years, 1,000 years, 2,000 years in the grave. Allah used the word visit because it's a temporary place. And this is known as Dar al-Barzakh. Al-Barzakh. Everyone has to face it. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He said, كَلَّا سَوْفَ تَعْلَمُونَ. This is the promise from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He said, indeed, you shall come to know. You shall know. You will see the hijab has been lifted. Your wife, your children, they're going to bury you. We're going to pray your janazah. But none of us are going to get in the grave with you. We're going to turn our backs and continue on with our lives. Your wife is going to remarry. Your children are going to continue. Everything that's left with you in that grave is your hasanat, your deeds, ya Abdullah. Al-hasanat, ya Amatullah. Was-sayyi'at, ya Amatullah. And your bad deeds. Was-sayyi'at, ya ibadallah. Are you preparing for your grave? Are you preparing for it? Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He reiterates, ثُمَّ كَلَّا سَوْفَ تَعْلَمُونَ. And again, you will know. He said, and again, for certainty, you will know. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He begins by defining the type of knowledge. He said, كَلَّا لَوْ تَعْلَمُونَ عِلْمَ الْيَقِينِ. If you knew with sure knowledge, if you had certainty referring to right now, today, the reality of the grave and everything that's included, you would have behaved and acted differently. You would have prepared yourself. You would have prepared yourself. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He said, لَتَرَوُنَّ الْجَحِيمِ ثُمَّ لَتَرَوُنَّهَا عَيْنَ الْيَقِينِ. He said, and you will see the blazing fire. And again, you shall see it with certainty of sight. Knowledge, my brothers and sisters, is of 3 levels. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala noticed He mentioned ilm al-yaqeen. Ilm al-yaqeen, which comes from the Quran and the Sunnah. But you haven't seen it yet, but you believe in it. You have certainty that what is being told to you is true. Then in the next verse after that, He mentioned Ayn al-Yaqeen. Ayn al-Yaqeen, what is it? This is when you see it with your eyes. And seeing it with your eyes is stronger than believing it. And another level of knowledge, which is the 3rd one, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He said, إِنَّ هَذَا لَهُوَ حَقُّ الْمُبِينِ حَقُّ الْيَقِينِ. And finally, this is the highest level, which is haqqul yaqeen, which is haqqul yaqeen. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is letting us know that this is the truth. This is the truth, that blazing fire, Jahim. Jahim. This is one of the names of hell. As its other name mentioned in the previous surah, was Al-Hawiyah. And another name for the fire is As-Sa'ir. As-Sa'ir. Wa'udhu billahi min Jahannam. Everyone will see the fire on that day. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He said, ثُمَّ لَتُسْأَلُنَّ يَوْمَئِذٍ عَنِ النَّعِيمِ. And then you will be asked about the delight that you indulged in. نَحْنُ الْآنِ فِي النَّعِيمِ. Even with the muqati'ah, even with the boycott going on between our brothering countries, we are still in Na'im. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. And this Na'im, we're going to be questioned about it. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said, لا تزول القدم الإبن آدم يوم القيامة من عند ربه حتى يسأل عن خمس. That the feet of the son of Adam shall not move before his Lord on the day of judgment until he's asked about 5 things. عن عمره فيما أنفاه وعن شبابه فيما أبلاه وماله من أين اكتسبه وفيما أنفقه وماذا عمل فيما علم. You will be asked about 5 things, and your feet will not move. You will be standing there in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You will be asked about your life and what you did with it. You will be asked about your youth and what you spent and how you enjoyed that time in your youthhood. You will be asked about your wealth and how you earned it and how you spent it. And you will be asked about the knowledge that you learned. How did you act by it? We will be judged about the blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us, my brothers and sisters. How did we prepare? How did we prepare? And how did we repay Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Are we from amongst those of shukr, of gratitude? Are we from amongst those who thanked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Ibn Abbas in Tafsir al-Baghawi, he said that this na'im that we're going to be asked about, it refers to healthy bodies. It refers to our hearing. It refers to our sight. Allah will ask us what we did with these blessings He bestowed upon us. Allah blessed us with wealth. How did we spend it? Allah blessed us with youth. How did we live in it? We're truly blessed, alhamdulillah, right now. There are people who are doing far worse way than how we're living. Living far worse. People haven't eaten maybe in 2 days. People haven't drank in pure and clean water. People haven't tasted meat in 6 months. What are you doing with this ni'mah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you? Abu Aliyah, he said the blessings here refers to Islam and the Sunnah. وَبِلَا شَكْ. And without doubt, this is one of the greatest blessings, to follow Islam and the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Take advantage of today, my brothers and sisters. Take advantage of what you have now. Don't gamble with your future. Don't say I'm young and I'll repent tomorrow. Don't say I'm going to start and being a pious person tomorrow. Don't say I'll grow my beard tomorrow. Don't say I'm going to fix my hijab or I'm going to start wearing a abaya. Don't say I'm going to stop doing this and stop doing that. Stop today while you still have the chance, because this sort of teaches us that the grave punishment is real. The slave will be asked about the blessings he had here on earth. About the blessings he had here on earth. And I close this khutbah by reminding myself and reminding you that since the grave is a reality, there are some ways that we can protect ourselves from his punishment. 1, read Surah Al-Mulk before you go to bed at night. This is an authentic hadith. Abdullah bin Mas'ud acted by it, and many other Sahaba. Read Surah Al-Mulk before you go to bed at night. And in another hadith, a way to illuminate your grave and your path to Jannah, it was collected on Ibn Umar radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, قَالَ مَنْ قَالَ دُبْرَ كُلِّ صَلَاةٍ, whoever says at the end of every prayer, وَإِذَا أَخَذَ مَضْجَعَهُ, and when he takes his bed, when he lies down to sleep, Allahu Akbaru Kabiran, عدد الشفع والوتر وكلمات الله تامت. Allah is the most great with the number of even and odd of Allah's perfect, beautiful, blessed words. Then he says after that, At-Tayyibat al-Mubarakat. He says this 3 times. After he says Allahu Akbar Kabiran, عدد الشفع والوتر وكلمات الله تامة الطيبات المباركات. He says this 3 times. And then he says, La ilaha illallah 3 times as well. كُنَّ لَهُ فِي الْقَبْرِهِ نُورًا. It will be a light in his grave. وَعَلَى جَسَرِ نُورًا. And on the sirat, the bridge that each and every one of us must cross, it will be light for you, these words. احفظ هذه كلمات يا عبد الله يا عمة الله. وعلى الصراط نورا حتى يدخله الجنة أو يدخل الجنة. أو يدخل الجنة.